Let me paint you a picture. It is 6:45 in the morning. A senior vice president, let's call him David, is just sitting in his car, the engine's humming, sure, but the real noise, this buzzing tension, is right inside his head. He's got these two huge meetings today that feel less like work and more like, well, like battlefields. But here's the thing. He isn't prepping to solve problems. He's not thinking about inspiring his teams. He's practicing for survival. And that, right there, is a huge problem we need to unpack. This line, man, it just gets right to the heart of this invisible pressure cooker so many leaders are in today. David's focus isn't on actually guiding his team. Nope. It's all about controlling how things look. You see, his sense of legitimacy, his feeling of being a good leader, isn't coming from inside anymore. It's totally outsourced to the approval or the disapproval of everyone else. I mean, his whole day is a gauntlet. First up, he's got to go into this C-suite briefing where a massive project he's in charge of is failing. He's got to manage the fallout. Then, later that night, he's at a community meeting for a capital campaign that's coming up short. So you've got two completely different worlds, right? But the internal pressure he's feeling, it's exactly the same. And this is where it gets really fascinating. You look at these two worlds, and they seem like total opposites. But they're actually just two sides of the very same coin. At work, he's living in what we call a prove-it economy. His entire identity is wrapped up in his results. He has to constantly show his output just to prove he deserves to be there. But then at his church, it's a performant economy. His worth there is measured by how exhausted he looks. Burnout is seen as a sign of devotion. Both places demand the exact same trade. Give up your inner authority in exchange for getting a thumbs up from the outside. This brings us to a name for what David is trapped in: the permission economy. This is any environment where leaders are constantly, quietly looking for permission to feel confident, to feel like they belong. And they're looking for it from something outside of themselves, whether it's KPIs, board approval, or just their reputation. It's that nagging voice in your head that says your value is only as good as your last win. And the personal cost of living like this? Oh, it's immense. It puts you in a constant state of high alert compliance. Your nervous system is just always braced for impact, waiting for the next criticism. And when that happens, leadership stops being about genuine connection and clear thinking. It becomes a performance. You're not leading anymore, you're acting. And the whole show is being directed by the fear of disapproval. So, if that's the problem, where on earth does the solution begin? Well, it starts with understanding a really fundamental truth. A leader's internal state, what's going on inside their head and heart, isn't separate from their team's reality. In fact, it's the very blueprint for it. This right here, this is the core equation. A healthy, thriving culture doesn't start with a new mission statement on the wall or fancy new software. It starts with the leader's consciousness, what they truly believe about their own worth, about control, about trust. That inner state is what determines their presence when they walk into a room, and that presence is what directly creates the culture. Only then, after all that, do you get to the outcomes. I love this idea. Think of a leader as the thermostat in a room. You don't just set the meeting agenda, you set the emotional temperature. So if you walk in anxious and trying to manage how things look, just like David, your team will feel that. They'll subconsciously adapt, they'll get guarded, they'll be more careful, maybe a little less honest, all to protect themselves. Your internal reality literally becomes their external reality. So if a leader's inner state is ground zero, how do we even begin to understand it? Well, we have to look at the culture inside our own heads. We have to ask, who or what is actually running the show in there? I want you to imagine your mind is a boardroom table, and all these different voices are fighting for the CEO chair. In David's story, his corporate meeting is being run by the protector, this voice that's desperate to control the story to avoid any criticism. Then his church meeting is being run by the appeaser, who just wants to keep everyone happy and not look unfaithful. And you can bet that hovering over both of them is the prover, whispering that his only real value comes from that last KPI report. And when these fear-based voices are running the meeting inside your head, your leadership on the outside becomes purely reactive. Any chance for clear, wise judgment gets totally drowned out by all the noise. The constant second-guessing, the worst-case scenarios playing on a loop. You stop leading and you start just managing your own anxiety. Okay, so that sounds pretty intense. How do we fix this? How do we fire that chaotic inner board? The antidote to the permission economy isn't just some vague advice like be calm. It's actually a structured, practical new model for leadership that you can build. The solution is what we call presence leadership. And at its core, it's about leading from a place of regulated authority. It's the skill of staying grounded, honest, and connected, especially when the pressure is on. That way, your leadership stays clean and intentional, not messy and reactive. This is an infrastructure you can build, not just an inspiration you hope for. And that infrastructure has a blueprint. We call it the alignment architecture. It shows us that presence isn't just some mystical feeling. It's a structure with component parts that you can actually assemble. It's built on 4 key pillars: clarifying your identity separate from your role, governing your own thoughts, leading with dignity for others, and building systems of genuine trust. When these are strong, you have a solid foundation for presence. Now, I know this might feel a little abstract, so let's make it incredibly real. A huge part of leading with presence is simply knowing how to handle those inevitable moments of conflict and breakdown in a constructive way. Here is a fantastic tool for exactly that: the 5-step repair conversation map. Just look at the structure for a second. Notice how it immediately shifts a tough conversation away from blame and toward resolution. It's about facts, it's about impact, and it's about ownership. This isn't about being soft. This is about being incredibly clear and responsible, and that builds trust faster than pretty much anything else. And that leads us to this really powerful idea. Look, mistakes, failures, conflict, these ruptures are gonna happen. They are not a sign of a bad culture. A bad culture is one where those ruptures get ignored, politicized, or swept under the rug. Real leadership, mature leadership, isn't shown in avoiding problems. It's shown in the skill and the willingness to repair them. So when you put it all together, this whole journey is about a fundamental shift in how you see yourself as a leader. It's the move from being a passenger, just reacting to circumstances, constantly trying to please people, waiting for permission, to becoming an architect. An architect is someone who intentionally and consciously designs their own inner state, their leadership style, and the culture that their team actually gets to live in every day. So we'll end with this. This is the question that sits right at the very heart of presence leadership. If you could just strip away that relentless, exhausting need to prove your value through your metrics and your image, if you knew deep down that your legitimacy was yours to own and not something you had to earn fresh every single day, what would change? What decisions would you make differently? How would you lead?